A mysterious inheritance and a mansion full of dark secrets. The truth Clara uncovered about her own family will shock you. Before the story begins, comment below which city you're watching the video from. We love getting to know our viewers. And of course, don't forget to subscribe to the channel so you won't miss more exciting stories. Enjoy the story and see you soon. Clara had grown accustomed to the constant sea breeze, like a subtle friend accompanying her on her early morning walks. Her days in the coastal village flowed at a serene pace, between weekly gatherings with Lucia and Dolores and visits to her granddaughter Marina. It was a comforting routine, filled with small moments and few surprises, until the day she received a letter that would change everything. The letter, in an old yellowed envelope, bore a familiar yet distant name: Maria Elisa, an aunt with whom Clara had barely had any contact. Upon opening the letter, Clara discovered that this aunt had left her an inheritance. It wasn't a fortune in money, but rather a mansion in the city. The envelope contained a worn key and a brief message written in delicate handwriting. Within every secret lies a forgotten memory. Clara held the key with curiosity, letting her fingers trace the curves and engravings of the cold metal. What could that phrase mean? Deep down, she had never thought much about her distant family. Clara's mother rarely spoke of Maria Elisa, describing her as a reserved and mysterious woman. The abandoned mansion that now belonged to her seemed like a missing piece of a puzzle she had never thought of assembling. Unsure of how to deal with this revelation, Clara sought comfort from her friends. That same afternoon, she invited Lucia and Dolores over for a chat. The two listened to the story with fascination and a slight unease in their eyes, as if the letter had awakened something in them as well. "I think you need to go there," Lucia suggested, a spark of adventure in her eyes. "I agree," Dolores added. "There might be something important only you can uncover." Clara, still hesitant, noticed the excitement in her friends. That mansion seemed to promise more than memories. She felt a spark of curiosity she hadn't felt in years, a desire to explore, to uncover the secrets Maria Elisa had left behind. They decided to set out together at the end of that week, leaving the village for a few days to embark on a journey to the mansion. The three friends, each with her own motivation: Clara for family, Lucia for adventure, and Dolores, perhaps, for a chance to revive the spirit of discovery that had faded over time. The journey to the city was filled with animated conversations and shared memories. As they neared the address indicated, a shadow of mystery seemed to descend upon them. The mansion stood on a quiet, secluded street with shuttered windows and walls thickly covered by ivy. The stones of the facade were a grayish hue, and the structure exuded a forgotten grandeur, as if waiting for someone who could bring it back to life. As Clara stepped out of the car, she felt an inexplicable connection to the place, even though she had never been there before. She held the key firmly and walked to the door, followed by Lucia and Dolores. With a metallic click, the key turned in the lock, and the door opened, revealing a grand hall with furniture draped in dusty sheets and a wooden staircase that elegantly rose to the second floor. The silence was palpable, broken only by the creaking of the floor beneath their feet. Clara took a deep breath, absorbing the scent of old wood and something indefinable. A feeling of reverence mingled with anticipation. She wondered how many lives had passed through there, how many stories those walls hid. As they explored the first rooms, they noticed small details from different eras, like a worn leather armchair and portraits of women with defiant expressions. On the hallway wall, a sequence of old portraits caught Clara's eye. Some faces seemed vaguely familiar, others stirred a strange sense of unease. When she turned to Dolores and Lucia, Clara found in her friend's eyes the same mixture of excitement and apprehension. She felt a shiver at the thought that here the past was merely waiting to be uncovered. And that first night, Clara was certain the mansion was full of secrets, eager to be revealed, as if every closed door held a piece of her own story she had never known existed. The next morning, sunlight filtered through the dusty windows of the mansion, revealing intricately sculpted architecture and ancient furniture frozen in time. Clara, Lucia, and Dolores began exploring the mansion with a renewed sense of purpose. They felt like pioneers in an unknown territory, and the atmosphere thick with mystery only intensified their emotions. Each room held traces of lives that had once passed through. The corridors were lined with paintings and old photographs, objects from another era scattered across shelves, and small locks adorning dark wooden doors. As they neared one of these doors, Clara felt an odd sensation, as if this lock concealed something that belonged to her. Lucia was the first to speak, pointing to an oval frame hanging on the wall beside the door. "Look, this woman, she looks like you, Clara." Curious, Clara stepped closer to the image. It was the portrait of a young woman with soft features and deep eyes that seemed to see beyond. The resemblance was uncanny, and a chill ran down her spine. Dolores, ever pragmatic, suggested, "I think we need to open this door." With a hesitant touch, Clara turned the handle, and the door gave way with a creak. The room was small, with furniture draped in sheets and a bedside table holding a chest. Clara's heart quickened. The chest seemed to be waiting for her, inviting her to unveil old secrets. With trembling hands, Clara opened the chest, finding a collection of old photographs and a worn envelope. She pulled out the photos and, to her surprise, saw an image she didn't recognize, a photograph of a couple holding a baby. The faces of the couple were unfamiliar, but the baby was undoubtedly her. This doesn't make sense, Lucia," Clara whispered, showing the photo to her friends. Lucia and Dolores were silent, sharing Clara's shock. She had always believed she knew her story, but that unknown couple holding her hinted at an entirely different reality. Dolores picked up the envelope from the chest and, upon opening it, found a handwritten letter. The handwriting was elegant and orderly, but the content was cryptic. "For Clara, who grew up loved and protected, but carries within her secrets she doesn't know. This house belongs to you, as it once belonged to me. It's a refuge for memories that must not be lost." Clara felt a lump in her throat. Who was that couple? And why had her aunt left her this inheritance filled with mysteries and cryptic phrases? The three friends remained silent until Lucia broke it with a suggestion. "Clara, I think we have to explore more of this house. It seems that in each room there's something waiting for you, something that's part of your own story." Driven by the discovery, the friends continued to open doors and drawers, each revealing a little more about the time and the people who had lived there. The rooms held antique furniture and intriguing objects, like a table with old perfume bottles, a carved wooden coat rack, and a collection of old books that seemed to belong to women who challenged the world with their ideas. As they moved forward, the house began to reveal its layers. Every photograph, every old notebook, and every carefully preserved garment seemed to suggest a larger mystery. But the question that echoed in Clara's mind remained unanswered. Who were these people? And why had she never known any of this? When night fell, the three friends decided to retire, exhausted and with minds flooded with questions. They sat in the main hall, surrounded by echoes of past stories, and Clara knew with certainty that this was only the beginning of a deep journey. The morning brought a thick mist around the mansion, as if the place itself wanted to keep its secrets well guarded. Clara, Lucia, and Dolores woke up early, eager to continue their exploration. The silence in the mansion, now almost familiar, seemed to carry the weight of untold stories, and the three friends sensed they were on the verge of uncovering something important. They decided to start on the second floor, where the architecture was older and the rooms were locked. As Clara walked through the corridors, she noticed small details, like the frames on the walls, that seemed to watch every movement. When she tried to open one of the doors, she realized it was locked. Lucia then suggested they search the house for an old key that might unlock the sealed rooms. After a brief search, Dolores found a bunch of old keys on top of a shelf. It was as if the mansion was gradually granting them access, piece by piece, to each secret it held. They chose one of the doors at the end of the hallway, and with one of the keys, they managed to unlock it. Upon entering, they found a room that seemed frozen in time. The air was heavier there, thick with moisture and the scent of old wood. A leather trunk lay at the foot of the bed, and upon opening it, Clara found a leather-bound journal with worn edges. She began to leaf through it and quickly realized it was a diary, a personal account written with raw emotion and pain. Today marks 3 days since my sister left, driven by the need to protect what we hold most dear. I don't know if she'll return, but her sacrifice will never be forgotten. She said the baby will be safe with our aunt, but my heart remains shattered. The text stopped abruptly, but those few words seemed to echo off the walls. Lucia read along with Clara, an incredulous expression on her face. Clara, could that baby be you? Clara felt the ground shift beneath her feet. It was a disturbing possibility, but one that made sense. The diary held no names or context, but the pain of that woman was almost tangible. And Clara realized that perhaps her childhood and family ties were far more complex than she had ever imagined. Dolores, who was examining other objects in the room, pulled a framed photo from one of the drawers. It was an old photograph of a group of young women dressed in period clothing gathered in front of the mansion. One of them looked familiar, with the same determined expression and distant gaze that Clara vaguely remembered from her mother. With each discovery, the story grew more intricate. Dolores, still pensive, commented, "It's as if there were a web of secrets binding all these women together, Clara. What could they have been protecting?" The friends spent the day uncovering objects in the room, noticing that among those women there seemed to be a strong and perhaps clandestine bond. Clara began piecing together the puzzle in her mind, combining fragments of the stories the house was sharing. The scribbled papers, unfinished letters, and black and white photographs depicted women who appeared defiant, living lives full of hidden purposes. As night fell, the friends decided to explore the attic, one of the last untouched spaces. They accessed it via a narrow, old staircase, and the attic door was locked. With the help of the bunch of keys, Clara managed to unlock the door, and they slowly climbed up. The attic was full of dusty boxes and old furniture, but something in the corner caught Dolores's attention. A pile of personal belongings, watches, medals, small velvet chests. Upon closer inspection, Dolores recognized one of the items as belonging to her own father. She was speechless. That small pocket watch had been given to her father in his youth, and seeing it there in Clara's mansion left her deeply shaken. What connection could her father have had to this place? The attic didn't hold only Clara's secrets. It seemed to be a point of convergence for all the secrets involving their families. Amid the confusion of objects and revelations, the friends felt enveloped in a mysterious web where each discovery seemed to raise more questions. As the night advanced, Clara, Lucia, and Dolores felt they were being watched by the shadows of the past, shadows that seemed alive and still very much present in the mansion. The first light of morning illuminated the mansion, but the attic remained shrouded in a dimness that seemed to eternize every object in its shadows. The pocket watch Dolores had found the previous night still lay on a small, aged wooden table, a silent remnant of a past that refused to be forgotten. Dolores, still shaken, hesitated to share her suspicions with Clara and Lucia, yet she knew she couldn't avoid it for long. Lucia, curious and always eager to push forward, suggested dedicating the day to further exploring the attic. Clara, her heart racing, agreed. Something in that room seemed to be calling her, like a promise of answers she wasn't even sure she was ready to receive. The friends began opening the dusty boxes stacked in the corners. Each revealed pieces of a forgotten era, faded silk dresses, yellowed diaries, and carefully folded letters. In one of these boxes, Clara found a sealed envelope with a red wax seal. Upon opening it, she discovered a letter signed by a woman named Elisa, her distant aunt's name. The letter described clandestine gatherings of women and mentioned a safe place for our ideals, our memories, and our protection. Clara shared the letter with her friends, and its meaning began to take shape in their minds. This place was more than just a house, Dolores concluded, her eyes wide. It was a meeting point. These women were building something together, a space to fight, to resist. As they investigated further, Lucia found a black and white portrait of 3 women gathered in the mansion's drawing room. One of them was unmistakable. Clara saw her own face reflected in the woman at the center of the photo. Although the woman was younger, the resemblance was striking. "It's her, my Aunt Elisa," Clara whispered, feeling an inexplicable connection to this figure. Among the diaries and documents, they found records describing the meetings of a secret society, formed by women who defied the conventions of the time to fight for women's rights and social change. There were letters exchanged between women of different social classes, sharing advice, ideas, and at times even assuming one another's identities to protect themselves from persecution and prejudice. As they continued to read, a new revelation emerged. In one of the diaries, Elisa mentioned a precious child who needed to be cared for by several women to ensure her future safety. The text didn't specify who this child was, but Clara felt a pang as she realized they might be referring to her. Dolores, still examining the personal items in the attic, found another surprise, an old brooch that had belonged to her own grandmother. The connection between their families seemed to grow more complex with each discovery, as if every piece was leading them to a shared fate they unknowingly held. "All of this connects us somehow," murmured Dolores, examining the brooch. "Our grandmothers, our aunts, there seems to be something bigger here." Clara, engulfed in mystery and a growing sense of loss, realized that her childhood might have been very different from what she had believed. She felt torn between the desire to uncover every detail and the fear of discovering that her life was built on hidden stories and lies. By the end of the day, the attic had revealed much more than they had imagined. Each object, each fragment of memory seemed to place a new piece in the puzzle. The suspicion that their grandmothers had been involved in the secret society grew stronger, and the possibility that they were more than friends, perhaps even relatives, made the mystery surrounding the mansion expand further. When night fell, the friends left the attic with restless minds. Clara felt that the mansion still held many secrets and knew they would only surface when she was ready to fully understand her story and, perhaps, face the hidden past of her family. The mansion felt darker that morning. Clara, Lucia, and Dolores descended from the attic with a sense of anxiety in their chests. The secrets they had uncovered the previous day intertwined in their minds, each detail revealing familial ties and a story of unity and sacrifice. Clara felt she was on the brink of uncovering something profound and irreversible. Lucia, ever insightful, suggested they explore one of the locked rooms downstairs. With the keys in hand, Clara slowly opened the door, and the scent of old wood and dried flowers filled the air. The room was cozy, with faded velvet curtains and a worn rug covering the floor. At the center of the room, a table with scattered documents drew their attention. Among the papers, Clara found a set of birth certificates and family records. As she leafed through them, she felt a jolt of surprise upon seeing her own name listed there. But what intrigued her most was the name just below hers, Lucia. The records indicated that they were cousins, daughters of sisters who had grown apart at some point in their lives. Clara looked at Lucia, eyes wide, trying to process what she had just discovered. Lucia, however, didn't seem as surprised. She lowered her gaze, and after a moment of silence, she confessed, "I always suspected that our families had a stronger connection than we knew. My grandmother spoke of a distant sister, but I never imagined she was so close to me through you, Clara." The revelation brought a mix of emotions. They felt united by bonds that transcended friendship, but at the same time, Clara experienced the sadness of a childhood lived without knowing she had such a close cousin. Dolores, touched by the discovery, observed her friends in silence, feeling that this revealed mystery was only the beginning of a much deeper story. They decided to continue examining the documents in the room. Each sheet seemed to tell a fragment of the lives of the women who had lived there, forming a narrative of sacrifice and love that spanned generations. Among the letters, they found accounts of secret gatherings and escape plans for women who had been persecuted for defying the norms of the time. The letters also mentioned a protective network formed by women who assumed different identities, creating bonds to protect each other. Dolores found a letter that made her heart race. The content was enigmatic, but it referenced a safeguard plan and mentioned her father. She read carefully, trying to connect the dots in her mind. It seemed that her father had been involved with the women of the secret society, assisting them in their missions in some way. Dolores had never imagined her own family was so close to the roots of that organization. My father, he knew. He was here. He was part of this, Dolores murmured, still incredulous. The revelation brought a new layer of mystery to the mansion. Clara and Lucia drew closer, sharing Dolores's shock and curiosity. They now understood that the past of their families was far more intertwined than they could have imagined, and that this mansion had been a place of refuge, unity and resistance. As the day wore on, Clara felt increasingly absorbed by the story she was uncovering. Her family's past was not a simple collection of facts. It was a rich tapestry woven with courage and sacrifice. She realized that her own destiny was somehow linked to what had happened there, as though the choices of her ancestors still echoed in her life. When night fell, the friends gathered in the main hall. Sitting around the fireplace, Clara felt that this moment of camaraderie was more than just simple friendship. They were bound by something ancestral, a bond that had withstood the passage of time. The friends woke up the next day, determined to continue unraveling the secrets of the mansion. Something in the recent discoveries had rekindled a spirit of determination in Clara, Lucia, and Dolores. They now understood that they were not merely investigating an inheritance. They were honoring a legacy of courage and struggle, passed down from generation to generation. They began in the main hall, where an old solid wood cabinet stood silently in one of the corners. When Clara opened it, she found several boxes labeled with dates ranging from the early 20th century to the 1950s. Each box seemed to correspond to a different phase of that secret society, like a timeline of the achievements and struggles those women had faced. Inside one of the boxes, Clara found a leather-bound book covered in a thin layer of dust. The title, embossed in faded gold letters, read, "Records of the Society." Curious, the friends leafed through the pages and soon realized that the book contained detailed records of the meetings and plans of the women who were part of the group. Clara felt a surge of pride as she read accounts of gatherings, strategies, and actions that these women organized to challenge the conventions of their time. The book described how the society was formed in response to an era of repression, where women were often silenced and subjugated. Every meeting was an act of courage, and the mansion was a sanctuary where they could express themselves freely and fight for a fairer world. The text detailed how they disguised themselves, using different identities and roles to protect one another, helping each other escape oppressive situations and find freedom. Dolores found a specific passage that held her gaze. It was an account of a moment when one of the women of the society had to hide after a protest. She described the assistance she received from a trusted man, someone who risked his own safety to protect her. Dolores recognized the description. It was her father. Moved, she shared the passage with Clara and Lucia, confirming his involvement in the secret support network for the society. "I never imagined my father had this kind of courage. He was always a reserved man, but now I see he carried a secret too," Dolores whispered, her eyes glistening. As Dolores absorbed this revelation, Clara found a letter hidden at the bottom of the box. It was signed by her Aunt Elisa and addressed to a sister-in-arms. In the letter, Elisa spoke about the risk of keeping the mansion as a meeting place and mentioned a special child who had to be protected at all costs. Clara felt a tightness in her chest as she realized the child mentioned was herself. The letter detailed the plan to keep Clara safe, transferring her care to different women in the society until a permanent home could be found. The words revealed a collective decision, a promise of protection that several women had taken on to ensure Clara's well-being. It was a support network in its purest form, a sacrifice made out of love. "You grew up surrounded by courage and protection, Clara," Lucia said, placing a hand on her friend's shoulder. "These women were more than your relatives. They were the guardians of your life." With a heart full of gratitude and a hint of sorrow, Clara realized that her story had been shaped by the strength and generosity of many women she would never know. That secret society had not been merely a group of resistance. It was a network of sisters, mothers, and caregivers who dedicated their lives to protecting other women. The day ended with the friends feeling more connected to the past than they had ever imagined. The mansion, which had once seemed merely an old and mysterious place, was now a temple of memories, courage, and female unity. And Clara knew that this was a legacy that needed to be honored, one that should be preserved for future generations. As night fell, the friends decided that they were ready to uncover the remaining mysteries of the house. They knew there was still much to discover, and that each secret revealed would take them deeper into the roots of a past that continued to resonate in their own lives. The discoveries of the past days had brought a new understanding of Clara's history, but they had also planted profound questions in her heart. With each secret unveiled, she felt that her identity was less solid and more enshrouded in memories that weren't truly her own. She was grateful for her friends' presence. Without Lucia and Dolores, she knew that facing this journey would have been far too lonely. That morning, as the first rays of sunlight spilled over the mansion, the three friends gathered in the main hall to explore the last boxes of documents they had found. Clara felt both anticipation and apprehension about what they might discover. She had already faced the truth that her life had been protected by a network of courageous women, but now she longed to understand exactly how this had shaped who she was. Lucia was the first to find something of relevance, an envelope containing a letter addressed to Elisa, the aunt who had left the mansion to Clara. The letter was signed by a woman named Vittoria, and the words revealed a deep connection between them. The letter recounted a night when Vittoria had to shelter a child. Clara, she immediately realized, to prevent her from being taken by someone who sought to silence the women of the society. In the midst of desperate words, Vittoria stated that she had kept the child for months, before finally passing her on to the next woman in the protective chain. Clara read the letter in silence, her heart aching with the revelation that, at some point, she had been moved from one home to another without ever knowing the reason. She felt a deep sorrow as she recognized the sacrifices so many women had made for her, but also a grief at the childhood she might have had, a childhood of stability and a single home. "You were never alone, Clara. These women were your guardians, like mothers coming together to protect you," Lucia said softly. Dolores, who had remained silent, watched Clara with a look of deep empathy. She knew that each secret revealed carried an emotional weight that was not easy to bear. In a gesture of support, she handed Clara a journal she had found earlier, believing its words might bring her more answers. Clara leafed through the pages and quickly realized that the journal belonged to her Aunt Elisa. Elisa wrote about the child she was tasked with protecting, the weight of her decisions, and the commitment to keep the secret of Clara's true identity. On one of the pages, Elisa mentioned her choice to entrust Clara to a woman whose love and dedication would be greater than any other feeling. Clara understood that this woman, who had finally taken her in as a daughter, was the one she had always believed to be her real mother. Elisa's words had a tone of farewell and gratitude, as if she had found peace in knowing Clara was in safe hands. As she read, Clara felt a mixture of gratitude and anguish. Her life had been nurtured and protected, but also built within a web of secrets that she would never have known without this unexpected inheritance. Lucia and Dolores, who followed along with each page, were visibly moved. They watched as Clara oscillated between joy and sorrow, discovering that her personal story was, in reality, the story of so many other women. It was a legacy of resistance and protection, but also of silent sacrifices. Clara closed the journal and looked at her friends, her eyes glistening, yet her expression was calm. "I think, in a way, I always knew there was something more, that my story was intertwined with something bigger, but I never knew how. Now I understand that I am part of something that spans generations." The three sat in silence, absorbing the weight of the moment. The mansion now seemed less like a place of memories and more like a symbol of unity and struggle. Clara knew there were still secrets to uncover, but she now faced them with a calmer heart, aware that the truth, however painful, was also a gift. As night fell, Clara, Lucia, and Dolores realized that the next step was to accept this story, to live with it, and perhaps to find a way to honor the sacrifices of their ancestors. The next morning arrived with a light rain, casting a somber tone over the mansion, as if it too mourned for so many hidden stories and lives marked by secrets. Clara, Lucia, and Dolores decided to face the remaining mysteries of the mansion, driven by the desire to finally understand the whole truth. Gathered in the main hall, they returned to the book Records of the Society, the one that documented the achievements of the secret society and its members. The pages were filled with names and dates, but something specific caught Lucia's attention. An entry marked with the term dissolution, which seemed to recount the moment the group had disbanded. Flipping through the following pages, Lucia read a detailed account describing a devastating betrayal that had threatened to expose the women of the society. One of the members, moved by fear and external pressures, had betrayed the trust of the others, leading to the capture and imprisonment of some of them and the eventual dissolution of the group. The secret society was disbanded, its ideals fragmented by a breach of trust. As Clara, Lucia, and Dolores absorbed the revelation, they realized the betrayal hadn't been only a matter of safety, it had shattered the bonds that united those women. Clara, still moved by the sacrifices so many women had made for her, felt the impact of this revelation like a blow. She realized that, beyond love and protection, her family's story had also been marked by fear and pain, by difficult decisions and broken lives. She felt that each of those women had paid a high price for their freedom and their desire to protect each other. Dolores found another significant passage mentioning an attempt to keep the group together after the betrayal, but it had been in vain. The society had not survived the weight of distrust and fear. The women had gone their separate ways, each carrying the marks of that experience. More than ever, Clara understood the value of these women's sacrifices and how much they had risked for a dream of freedom and equality. Lucia, who had remained silent, looked at Clara and Dolores with determination. "We can't let this story die here. These women deserve to be remembered not only for their pain, but for their courage. We need to find a way to honor all of this." Clara agreed, feeling that the mission of her ancestors was still unfinished. Perhaps it was her turn to take up the responsibility of keeping alive the spirit of those women who had done so much for her and others like her. The three friends realized that the legacy of the secret society hadn't been entirely lost. It lived on through them, in the stories, the objects, and the memories they had uncovered. Throughout the day, they discussed ways to honor the past and find a way to transform the mansion into a symbol of female unity. Clara felt it was a way to heal the wounds left by the betrayal and to rebuild the bonds broken by time. The mansion, a place that had witnessed so much suffering and courage, could now become a place of refuge and renewal. As night fell, Clara, Lucia, and Dolores were exhausted but filled with a new sense of purpose. They were determined to restore the value of that place and the stories it held. They knew the path ahead wouldn't be easy, but they also knew their ancestors had faced far greater obstacles. That night, as the rain drummed against the windows, Clara looked at her friends with gratitude and, for the first time, felt truly at peace. The morning brought a clear and calm sky, a contrast to the heavy atmosphere of recent days. Clara, Lucia, and Dolores were engrossed in their new purpose, discussing how to transform the mansion into a welcoming space and a tribute to the women who had passed through it. But before they could put their plan into action, they were surprised by the arrival of Marina, Clara's granddaughter. Marina appeared at the mansion unexpectedly, carrying a look of curiosity mixed with a hint of anxiety. Ever since her grandmother had mentioned the inheritance and the mysteries surrounding it, Marina had felt an inexplicable urge to see the place for herself. Clara greeted her with a smile, relieved to have her granddaughter there and eager to share everything they had discovered. After a brief tour of the house and the rooms where Clara, Lucia, and Dolores had made their discoveries, Marina seemed captivated by a strange energy. Her eyes focused on one of the walls in the hall, where an old shelf held a collection of period objects, brooches, medals, and other small items. Among them, Marina found something that felt familiar, a simple necklace with a leaf-shaped pendant, its metal darkened by time. She picked up the necklace carefully, her face visibly moved. "I've seen this necklace before," she said, her eyes fixed on the pendant. "My mother used to wear one just like this. At least, that's what I remember. She always wore a leaf like this before we moved to the village." Clara, hearing this, felt a chill run down her spine. What Marina described felt like more than just a coincidence. She moved closer to her granddaughter, examining the necklace carefully, recalling stories of women who had passed through the mansion, leaving mementos and belongings as a way of marking their presence and preserving their dreams. Dolores and Lucia, sensing the connection, encouraged Marina to keep exploring. With the necklace in hand, Marina wandered through the corridors, guided by an intuition that led her closer to something essential. In one of the rooms, she found a black and white photograph of a young woman wearing an identical necklace. The woman's face was unmistakable. It was her mother. Marina was stunned to see the portrait. How could her mother be connected to the mansion? How could she have been there and left behind the necklace that Marina now held? Answers didn't come easily, but she felt an unexpected peace in realizing that her mother had also been part of this story, even if in a mysterious way. Clara embraced her granddaughter, feeling a mixture of relief and understanding as she realized that, like herself, Marina was connected to this place in a profound and inexplicable way. Marina's presence made everything clearer. The mansion wasn't just a relic of the past, it was a point of connection to the future. Perhaps it was the destiny of each generation to return to this place, finding within it the refuge and strength left by their ancestors. Lucia and Dolores watched the scene with admiration, feeling as if the circle was finally closing. It was as if the mansion had waited years to reveal this last piece, the link that connected Clara and Marina to everything that had happened there. With tear-filled eyes, Clara held Marina's hand and said with serene conviction, "You're part of this story too, my dear. Maybe even more than we imagined. This mansion has always been waiting for us to return and continue what they began." That night, Clara, Lucia, Dolores and Marina sat together, wrapped in the shadow of the history they had uncovered and the glow of the future they envisioned for the mansion. They felt whole, united by the courage of the women who had come before them and by the bond they had discovered and strengthened with each revelation. The mansion, once filled with secrets and silences, now felt brimming with promise. The rainy night carried an air of renewal, as if the mansion itself breathed a sigh of relief after decades of holding secrets. Clara, Lucia, Dolores, and Marina gathered in the main hall, seated around a sturdy wooden table, their faces illuminated by the glow of the fireplace. In that quietude, they decided the future of the mansion, fully aware of the symbolic power held within each wall, every object, and each memory they had unearthed. Dolores was the first to speak. "This mansion needs to continue as a safe place, a space for other women to find refuge and support. The women who passed through here fought for a world that's still in the making. We can honor this legacy by continuing what they started." Lucia nodded, a spark of excitement in her eyes. "And we don't just have to preserve the old stories. We can help create new ones, helping other women write their own. This mansion can be a meeting point for women of all ages, just like it was in the past. We can transform this place into something that truly makes a difference." Feeling profoundly connected to her family's legacy and the space itself, Marina suggested transforming the mansion into a support center for women. The idea was to offer guidance, meeting spaces and workshops, creating a network of emotional and practical support for women facing difficulties. The friends all felt that it was the perfect way to keep alive the spirit of resilience and solidarity that permeated the place. Clara, moved by the strength of Marina's ideas, knew that this was exactly what the women of the secret society would have wanted. She looked around the hall, recalling each letter, diary, and photograph they had found, feeling a sense of peace. This mansion has always been a refuge, a place of struggle and protection. Now we can give it a new purpose, one that preserves what was built and helps other women find strength and community. Over the following days, Clara, Lucia, Dolores, and Marina began bringing the project to life. They transformed the rooms into welcoming spaces, each with a touch of the history they had uncovered. One room for meetings and sharing, another for reading and study, and even a small office for legal and psychological support. In the attic, they created a memorial, an exhibit of documents, photographs, and objects telling the story of the secret society, a tribute to all the women who had passed through. As the months went by, the mansion became a symbol of renewal and strength, drawing women from the city and surrounding areas who found in that space a place where they could be themselves, free of fear or judgment. The support center grew, connecting women across generations and stories, creating a new network of protection and solidarity. Each woman who came left a part of herself and carried with her the spirit of the former members of the secret society. Clara felt fulfilled and at peace, confident that the legacy was secure in the hands of women who would continue to fight for and support each other. Marina, in turn, took on the role of the center's guardian, following in the footsteps of her grandmother and the ancestors who had started this movement. On a night much like that first one, with rain softly pattering on the mansion's roof, Clara, Lucia, Dolores, and Marina sat together to celebrate. They felt bound together, as if each secret uncovered had woven them into an inseparable bond. The promise they sealed that night was simple but powerful: to keep alive the legacy of courage, unity, and resistance. The mansion, once a reminder of the past, was now a bridge to the future, a place where women would continue to find strength and support. And so, with the sound of rain cradling their thoughts, the four women smiled, knowing they had fulfilled the mission of honoring their ancestors and keeping alive the memories and ideals that had inspired them so deeply. And so we conclude this thrilling journey of Clara, Lucia, Dolores, and Marina, united by the strength and secrets of their ancestors in the old mansion. If you enjoyed this story, filled with twists and emotional discoveries, don't forget to give it a like, subscribe to the channel, and hit the notification bell so you won't miss more adventures like this one. Now, we want to hear from you. Which part of the legacy of the women from the mansion touched you the most? Was it the sacrifice of each generation to protect Clara, or the decision to transform the mansion into a support center for women? Let us know in the comments what you would do if you discovered your family was hiding a secret as important as Clara's. We'd love to hear your thoughts, so leave a comment below. And of course, stay tuned for more stories that connect the past to the present in surprising ways. See you in the next video.